Dear students, we are entering a new chapter, Chapter 6, Molecular Basis of Inheritance. In the last chapter, we discussed about the principles of inheritance and heredity. But here we are going to the secrets of heredity at the molecular level. That is why the chapter is named Molecular Basis of Inheritance. Thus, for the study of genetics, scientists have been using model organisms. So, what's a model organism? A model organism is a non human species that is extensively studied. What for? To understand a particular phenomena with the expectation that discoveries made in model organisms will provide insight into the working of other organisms. To list a few, the first one is Caenorhabditis elegans. Second one is Drosophila melanogaster, which you are familiar with. In the chapter 5, we have learned it. The third one is a fish, Danuario. Otherwise, it is known as zebrafish. That is also widely used for the studies on genetics and molecular biology. Next one is a mouse, Mus muscularis. In our place, the mouse is grey in color. Mouse are available in 5 different colors. This is otherwise called as guinea pig. This is widely used in laboratories for most of the studies. Rats are closely related to human beings and many behavioral patterns are also seen. The next one is a frog known as Xenopus tropicalis. It is otherwise called western cloud frog. This is also very important in study of genetics. All these organisms can breed and produce young generation within weeks of time. That is another advantage why these organisms are chosen. Yet another organism is a bird, Gallus gallus, or commonly known as chicken. And they are also widely used for genetic studies, and they share most of the characteristics of the next class, that is mammals. So, to have a glance of all these organisms, model organisms in science and research. Okay, not only these vertebrates, scientists widely use microorganisms for their studies. Many species of microorganisms are also used for genetic studies, but the ones which are mentioned in your textbook are mainly one fungus and another bacterium. The first one is a bacterium known as E. coli or Escherichia coli. It's a bacterium. You are coming across that term in many instances in the coming chapter. The next sample is Saccharomyces cerevisiae, a fungus that is also mentioned in your coming chapters. So these are the model organisms that we have to encounter with in the next chapter. Isn't it very interesting to know that all living things share common genes? All living organisms store genetic information using the same molecules, DNA and RNA. Written in the genetic code of these molecules is compelling evidence of the shared ancestry of all living things. Evolution of higher life forms require the development of new genes to support different body plans and types of nutrition. Now let us peep into the world of DNAs and RNAs. And we will be considering human cell throughout our studies, and no other mention will be made in between. Human cell, as you know, is having a nucleus and it is having 23 sets of chromosomes. Millions and millions of cells are present in human body, and each and every cell will be having the same set of chromosomes. But they behave differently. They have different functions and they behave differently. That's all. The number of chromosomes and the sets of chromosomes, sex chromosomes, everything is identical in all cells. As you see in this picture, a cell is having cytoplasm and it's having a nucleus. The chromosomes are present inside the nucleus and they can in no way come out of the nucleus. The chromosomes are made up of histone proteins and DNA. So the DNA in no way come out of the nucleus. But it is giving the message, it is controlling the cell, it is controlling the human body. But without coming out of the nucleus, how will it convey its message to others? For that, it has single-stranded helpers called messenger RNAs, or in short we say mRNA. But mRNAs can travel through the nuclear pores. They can come to the cytoplasm. They'll be coming with a message from the DNA that a particular protein is to be synthesized. mRNA cannot synthesize the proteins. It needs the help of some other RNAs also. So the second type of RNA that is present inside the nucleus is rRNA, ribosomal RNA. During the time of cell division, you have learned about the nucleolus vanishes or disappears. So nucleolus is actually composing the material of rRNA. They are used in the preparation of a cell inclusion known as ribosomes. So rRNAs are present inside the ribosomes. So when the mRNA comes to the cytoplasm, rRNA molecules are receiving them. They are holding the mRNA tight so that the third type of RNA, or known as tRNA or transfer RNA, can come and read the message on the mRNA. And these transfer RNAs, they are 20 in numbers. Each one corresponds to an amino acid. So, seeing the requirement of the mRNA, these tRNAs go and fetch up the amino acid, bring them near the mRNA, and the amino acids are linked together to form the protein. This is the simplest way I can present about the protein synthesis and the duty of DNA and RNAs in the synthesis of proteins. So, shall we enter into the wonderful world of deoxyribonucleic acid and ribonucleic acid? A very interesting topic. You can leave nothing or no points in between. If you select the topic and study, you are not going to study this chapter at all. Each and every concept is very, very important and are linked. If you are not learning one portion and looking for some answers from the next portion, it is futile. It's of no use. So please be sincere in analyzing the wonderful world of deoxyribonucleic acid first, followed by the structure of RNAs.